Let's bring this meeting to order.
Are your microphones on?
Oh, I forget, we didn't have to do this last time. Is it
Mine's on.
that one right there? Okay. Let's see. First order is the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll stand and face the right. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
Who does roll call?
Okay. Joan McInerney.
Here.
I'm sorry, I don't have everyone's names.
Donna Fathke.
Donna Fatke.
Here.
Brad Lambert.
Brad Lambert.
Kathy O'Brien here.
Kathy O'Brien. Okay.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay, we need to do item 4, election of a board chairman. Do I have any nominations for a board chair?
I nominate Donna Fatke for board chair.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays? Motion passed. All right, big chore here. Item 5, approval of minutes. These are minutes from our last meeting, which were in 2020, but for various circumstances, the minutes were never written and approved. So I'm going to go through one by one. Do I hear a motion to approve? Can I do this in mass?
You can.
Okay, so we've got minutes from February 4th, 2020, May 7th, July 16th, August 13th, August 20, September 3rd, September 24th, October 1, October 8, and November 5th, all in the year 2020. Advisory impact fee, advisory committee meetings. Do I hear a motion to approve these minutes?
I motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay. You don't have to, you know.
I know, but
Choose.
I
Sure.
think 2 years, almost 3 years going, and not part of the process.
Okay. Any nays? Motions pass. Okay. New business, I'm going to turn the meeting over now to our consultant,
Matter work.
Matt O'Rourke. I'm looking for the name of the company. America Structure Point. Thank you. Turn your mics on.
Thank you. Well, good evening. Nice to see everyone. My name is Matthew O'Rourke. I'm with American Structure Point. We are a multidisciplinary engineering firm. I happen to run our planning and economic development group, so we specialize in ordinances like this, zoning ordinances, zoning law, long-range planning, comprehensive planning, those types of studies, Parks and Rec master plans. And also joining me virtually is David Baird, who's another one of our senior planners on staff and also an attorney. So he's one of the ones that's really been helping us with the legal matters. As you know, this is a pretty state-specific set of statutes that we're here to comply with. So without any other ado, is any questions kind of on who we are, or we can jump right into the presentation? Great.
Okay, if we ask, sorry, thank you. I assume it's okay if we ask questions during the presentation?
Yeah, by all means, anytime you want me to pause, but I feel free to just jump right in and ask a question to clarify. The presentation this evening is a pretty, high-level summary of what was in the document that was distributed. So we're really just want to hit the highlights, and then if there's any details we want to dig into, we're happy to do that. So with that, make sure I'm doing this right. Aha. So, what we're looking at here this evening is a park impact fee, basically amount and ordinance update. State law requires that you do this every 5 years if you have one on the books. Every time you do that, you want to basically go through what's called a zone improvement plan. And so what you see here on the slide are some of the key deliverables that as we went through this process, working with the town and the park department to get us to this point where we're at here this evening. Essentially, what we did in terms of proving level of service and looking at the impact fee ordinance was examine the existing facilities, which the Parks Department really helped us with that. We came up with the zone improvement plan that was distributed, and then created the impact fee ordinance, which provides the funding mechanism for new parks and recreation facilities necessary for, as we look at it, it's pretty necessary for the town's rapid growth, doing somewhere around 400 permits a year, and we'll go through that in a little bit. But that's really what one of the impetuses was for restudying this and looking at it. There's a lot of people moving to town, a lot of homes getting built, especially in the run-up after the COVID pandemic started. And it is impacting, the use of the parks. More people are living here and using the parks, which creates maintenance issues, those sorts of things. So it's really, and one thing we wanted to highlight is, as we've worked with the Parks Department, this and a Parks and Rec master plan, which you're supposed to redo every 5 years as well, are pretty similar, at least in terms of the inventory and a lot of the base level information you put in there. So we sort of wrote that zone improvement plan as if we were also writing that 5-year update, because that's going to be due in about a year. So we wanted to provide that extra kind of analysis and inventory. We probably put a lot more in there than quote unquote required by state law, but we did so knowing that it's coming right around the corner anyway, and we had to kind of duplicate efforts, so we did that. There'd be a few more pieces to that plan, but that's how we went about doing this one. It's changing on me. Can't really tell if this is moving. Okay. So the purpose of the actual plan is to identify capital improvements and infrastructure for parks and rec facilities. And it's an important clarification that you cannot use park impact fees to pay for anything outside capital improvements, such as new equipment, replacing equipment, maintenance, those. So you can't use it to pay operational costs at all. Things like staff, salaries, pension funding, any of those things are not eligible. It has to be on physical improvements, basically being caused by the demand. And that you're supposed to equate that into what's called an equitable impact fee that the town assesses on that new quote-unquote construction, which new redevelopment and or replacement of existing facilities does count as new construction, since those are new costs being spent in the community. And it's passed via resolution at the town council level once we get to that point, but a big part of the process is where we're at now. So the existing facilities review, talked about this a little bit and how it lines up with the Parks and Rec master plan. Staff in St. John does a great job of really inventorying these things. So what we did is drive around and verify what was out there, counted all the swings, benches, parks, trash cans, those things, you name it. But also we've developed a little bit of a specialty in identifying just things that may need to be improved for ADA requirements or mobility issues. We have a member on our staff who has some limited mobility, and that's something she's taken a big head on and really educated us on. So one of the things we look for were maintenance or issues or things that might need to be improved for that as well. So we really added that on to what the Parks Department had already done from their staff. The inventory is very important to explain why the impact fee assessment is necessary, especially when you start thinking about replacement versus new people moving in and the age of some of the equipment, if it's going to be able to hold up the next how many years or if it needs to be replaced. And then we also work to develop an aid and development of a new Parks Master Plan. Essentially, you'd have to redo all this in a year if you were doing the Parks and Rec Master Plan. It requires that same inventory and analysis and needs assessment. So that's a big part of what we were, when I talked about duplicating efforts, that's what we really built into this. Another thing we looked at was miles of trails. Just want to make sure that that was built into here. Really, the town provides a lot of kind of internal walking trails. I think a lot of the ones that go up and down the major roads are provided by other providers. So really, that's what we're focusing on for this effort, but wanted to make sure we were accounting for that. And then certainly wanted to make sure, as we went through this, accounting for the future growth that's expected. And as we looked at this, and we put some population and housing unit projections into the report, the zone improvement plan, where we kind of looked at this future land use map. This is from the town's existing comprehensive plan, and it shows, more room, more area for growth heading south of St. John. So a big part of what we were thinking in terms of future needs is not only what's going on now with existing growth, but how that projects out into the future. Another item that was encapsulated into that was something that the town and Parks Department is considering, which is an indoor community center. Another firm, plus some of our architects, were hired to do a very high level, just what is needed in the area as part of this needs assessment. It was technically a different study because they want to really suss out what was in demand in those facilities. What they found was St. John's does not have one, and that was also documented in our report. And a lot of towns this size of comparable communities generally do offer some indoor types of facilities for a variety of things. In this case, what they found, there was a gap in the market, if you will, for volleyball courts, fitness classes for yoga, Zumba, similar indoor activities like that. But also it will provide that increased level of service that the town could use as its population grows. This is one of those things that we discovered wasn't really here and really is something that might be really nice for the residents to have. Since it gets cold, you want to have some indoor facilities to do some of these nice things. This is a very conceptual design showing potential for some dining areas, and you have to forgive me, I'm not an architect, so interpreting all the colors and the little boxes isn't my specialty, but essentially what it showed is the need for a fairly moderately sized facility with 3 indoor courts that would be multi-flex, so you could have basketball, volleyball, all the other indoor sports, and then aside rooms for either gathering, meetings, hosting events like euchre tournaments, that kind of thing. And so the reason we're highlighting this is that was part of what was put into our park fee calculations as we went through it, is the capital costs associated with this, at least the estimates for that. So that was part of what was built into that new park impact fee that we'll get to in a few slides.
So thanks, Don. The feasibility study for the community center, that is completed at this point?
Yes, it's at the point where, it can get to the needs of, that was really to focus on just what type of facility was needed and what size it could be, potentially, but it didn't go as far as any sort of actual designs yet.
Okay.
Yeah, the town's still considering all those options, so they're not like, we're not out designing that facility yet. We just wanted to know what the market / St. John needed in terms of activities.
Has it been a determination that it would be a greenfield site or an existing structure modified?
No, I would defer to Dave mostly on that, but that's still all options are under consideration.
Okay.
I don't want to speak out of turn. I think the preference would be to see if one of the existing park sites could accommodate it, because then you don't have to worry about buying new land.
Yeah, I can add to that a little bit. So there have been a few sites that the town has looked at, and the Parks and Rec Department is looking at. There is concern about the price of land, and also the fact that if something weren't bought in the future years, that the price is just increasing. There is a location that's on the southern area of town today, but would be in the, Matt, can you go to the next slide, that future land use slide?
Oh, no, that's a
Or
couple.
one-
You mean the
Oh,
park
I'm sorry.
coverage
It's,
slide?
it's actually previous.
Yeah.
It has the future land use map where it shows where the towns are growing.
Yep.
Yeah, from that, it's really very much on the southern end of town, and I think
Not gonna show it.
from this area, it may even show that it's recently been annexed in, but that's very conceptual at this point, and it's close to an existing park, like you said, but there's no definitive, decision as to whether to buy that. So that there are discussions ongoing, but nothing has been finalized.
So then that means the dollar amount that's been allocated to help determine the impact fee is an estimated dollar amount of what you think it may cost with land and development?
That's correct.
That's
And
correct.
does it factor in that we're talking 5 years out before you accumulate that pot of money, which would, because it's going to take 5 years to get the dollar amount listed.
Right.
And if that's the dollar amount needed to do the work, then you're talking 5 years out, which means are you projecting construction costs out for 5 years?
So we didn't go quite to that level of detail. What we did was build in a contingency of approximately 20 to 25% for the rising construction costs. But to counteract that, we did not include land costs because we knew that potentially locating on a non-greenfield site was a possibility. So we went really a little high on the contingency, but we didn't add in the land costs, if that makes sense. I'm trying to, fruitlessly point at where David was trying to get to, but this laser pointer won't go on the TV, unfortunately. Sorry about that. Did that answer your question, I think, or was there anything else?
No, thank you.
So this is the right size facility for the community, and that was really to the crux of what that a needs assessment analyzed was how big a facility was the right size, what type of activity should go in there, can it host development of additional leagues for the sports that were identified, maybe even possibly hold non-sporting events, trade shows, community events, corporate events, local euchre tournaments, things like that. It kind of that's what that report really dove into to kind of figure out what it was the right size. Yes.
One of the things I'd just like to inject at this point is that there's a big need for a meeting room in this area. There's a lot of HOAs, and we don't have, the only place to meet is in the dining room of the retirement home in the area.
Yeah, it makes sense.
They
Yeah.
love having us. I mean, we're potential customers.
Potential users. So that's what we want to hear. So yeah, I think multi-purpose space like that for
Yes.
meetings and other things is all baked into that plan for assessment.
Absolutely. I just second that meetings like that were definitely brought up in our conversations.
Yep, and to where we were just talking about if we did look at least what size of land would be needed, and that's what's highlighted on this slide, where it could be potentially to host a few. If you're going to do it, you might as well look at finding more outdoor activities as well, such as adding some potential field space for outdoor activities, soccer, those type of sports, lacrosse. I say lacrosse because my son just figured out lacrosse this year magically out of the blue. So, but it seems like it's growing like crazy. I spent the last 3 years of my career before here living in Texas, and I never thought I'd see kids playing anything but football there. But lacrosse was growing by leaps and bounds. So, if you're gonna look for a site, you might as well add on a little bit. So that part of that was built into how we assessed it. 2 acres, give or take, for some parking lot space. You're going to need parking. The 2 acres for the building, possible playground, outdoor spaces for gatherings, et cetera, et cetera. So if you can't find a place to co-locate the facility on an existing site, you're looking at probably 7 to 8 acres. And so that's part of what that land cost decision was. It'd be preferable to find somewhere where, especially to now where some land's going $40,000, $50,000 an acre in some places, it'd be preferable to find a place where that wouldn't work. So we wanted to highlight that as part of the thinking that went into our overall needs assessment for the zone improvement plan. One other item we looked at is shown on this map, which is coverage of all the parks. So if you look at the map here, those either greenish yellow circles represent coverages for neighborhood parks. So essentially how far you logically expect people to walk to them. And then the bigger blue areas are community parks. They generally have a bigger service area. So we laid this out on a map and looked at where all the basically 25 different parks are. Coverage in the community is pretty good from a overall perspective. So we're looking at this saying not a lot of need for new park space just to serve as a park. So part of what we saw in this was that we don't know if there'll be a whole lot of new park need and or acres bought for park space, but what we will probably start seeing is as the town grows, more and more people coming to the existing parks. So that really is what started to develop the crux of what we kind of built into our level of service. I mentioned earlier on the comprehensive plan slide, there's over 400 houses being permitted annually right now. We average that out. By 2025, that could increase the total homes in the community to over 9,200. By 2027, the 5 years after that is this park impact fee limit, would be over almost 10,500. So that's a lot of increase in people. That's a lot of increase in population. And so those people are going to use the existing facilities. They're going to come here and have them. We think they're in the right location. We think they're spread out nicely throughout the community to help accommodate that. And the study confirmed this, but what we see is the need for more amenities and more things for people to use. So the community center would be a good example of that. Adding, there's plenty of parks throughout town that have big open fields. Maybe they become other features that we're putting in our cost estimates. Existing internal walking trails, and that's why I highlighted that earlier. A lot of them could probably have a perimeter trail to provide that asset, or those little fitness centers, those kinds of things. So that's really what we saw. Is the land is here, it's already owned by the town. It's really accommodating the population growth through just adding to what's here and adding more things, more activities for people to do. Just kind of I don't expect anybody to try to read through this slide, but just to kind of show you what that needs assessment looks like in terms of how we broke it down by amenities once we kind of arrived at that conclusion, which was the town has one amphitheater right now that serves about 21,583 people. By 2027, that would serve 27,000 if we look at the top row. So that's kind of the impact of new residents coming to St. John by amenity type. I don't think we'd want a new amphitheater based on those ratios, but when you start to go down the line and look at dog parks, so fountains, green spaces, park benches is probably one we can put a little there, but like playground equipment is a big one. I know it's popular. People, especially in communities with younger families, want to have playgrounds nearby. You're going from every park piece of play equipment serving 981 people up to 1,231. And so a big part of our recommendations were on how to make sure we're building the park system using the existing land to accommodate those sorts of increases on the existing infrastructure. So do we have any questions on that? I think this is probably a good stopping point because that's the crux of the needs assessment, and then the majority of the rest of the presentation sort of gets into the legal mechanics of the impact fees and how that works.
So what portion of the presentation here would cover actual math? Like
That's coming up in
that's
the next
coming?
couple
Okay.
slides, yeah.
All right, thanks.
So,
One question.
Yep.
When they looked at the community center, was it looked at the option for it being funded privately, like a YMCA or something like that, letting it, instead of it being a community-based?
we didn't, the study didn't get into that level of detail on funding. It was really more about creating the what's needed, and then that stuff would come up later. So basically, at the crux of it, what is an impact fee? It's a one-time charge. In Indiana, state statutes are very specific that this is at place at time of permit issuance, so it doesn't impact any existing residents. It's only charged whenever somebody goes to get a permit for a new residential unit. So that could be single-family, duplex, apartment units, all across the spread. But it's a one-time fee charged when that permit is issued based on how many dwelling units are the permit's being issued for.
Just a question to clarify, Mike.
Yep.
When you said single family, you don't mean single family, like if someone bought an individual lot in an existing old pocket?
Yeah,
Would-
as long as there's a home there and there's no permit
No,
being
no,
issued
there
for that
wasn't
home.
home. Like, there's a few random lots in like Lantern Woods.
Yeah.
If they bought, an individual bought a singular lot in an already developed subdivision, would this fee apply to them?
Yes, because there would be a building permit issued for a new home at that
Okay.
point, which means
This-
it would be
This isn't a
eligible.
large developer fee. This is any single, okay.
Yeah,
that's-
it's applied, evenly. You can, state law, and St. John's has not typically done this, you can change the amount owed based on the type of unit being permitted. So a single-family home usually has more people, so it has a little bit of a higher impact fee versus an apartment where it's spread out over more units. But that's about all the wiggle room you have in state statute for something like that.
And the fee does, I'm sorry, the fee does get assessed when the building permit. So it's not, if someone bought the piece of land and then they're not building upon it, then there's not a fee assessed at that point. I don't know if that was part of the question or not, but I wanted to clarify that.
Yep, thanks, David.
And this is only residential. Is there any impact on business development?
Not for parks specifically. I
Just
think
wanna make
other
sure.
types of impact fees, roads and so forth, do have more of that. And so, just reiterate, the impact fees are not paid by existing residents, as in they don't, somebody that already owns a home here, or even somebody new that comes to town that buys an existing home, they wouldn't be charged this fee. It's only on new construction. And impact fees are a way to ensure that developers, as they come in, it's a way to help pay for that putting into the new system. I think oftentimes over the years, developers would create a little park inside their community, and that's great if they want to do that, but sometimes, and I think in St. John's is a good example of, then you end up with just another small park that's serving a population that's already served. So this is a way for communities to invest the money into the existing facilities to make sure they're upkept and serving the population, as opposed to having more and more parks dispersed. But that doesn't mean you can't do the other things. It's just this is one way that communities in Indiana, it's a tool that they have to help do that to deal with the increase in the population as towns build out such as this. So the impact fee ordinance, this is the actual ordinance that the town council will approve. Recommends a total impact fee determined by the calculations within the zone improvement plan. The town council may adopt this or a lower fee if they want. If they think that what was basically calculated through the effort we went through is a little on the high side, they have the right to lower that. They do not have the right to raise it. So the fee we calculated is the maximum. If they think they want to have a separate amount for that, they can basically do that based on judgment of the town council. And so then once it goes through this, it's passed via ordinance. And in this case, it's not new. It's an existing park fee that is being charged currently. It would extend it for another 5-year term. And then at the end of that 5 years, the town would reassess if they still want to continue down that road or not. So Indiana state statute states the following. I don't want to read this, but essentially it doesn't give us a formula to calculate the impact fee. It says you're supposed to look at existing needs, future needs, and kind of try to determine that out, but it doesn't get more specific than that. It just says it has to be shared costs incurred throughout by the unit, improving the infrastructure and maintaining it for future levels of service. So in the case of St. John, what we did is looked at the compliance with the state statutes. We looked at the existing level of service and then compared that, which was that table we showed earlier, as one method of how we did that. And looked at that and how the impacts of the continuing development, those 404 permits a year, will impact the system as a whole. And so that we went through the data crunching, and then came up with the new park impact fee that is required by the state law. Town council can choose to lower that. We mentioned on the early slide, we got that in there twice. And then we're looking at adopting this by the end of July, because basically that's about when the park impact fee would expire under the current 5-year term. So that's one of the reasons we're bringing this forward through the schedule that we're on currently. So you asked about the math. Essentially, what it was is in the report, you'll notice there's a complete list of all the either maintenance items, redone trails, new trails, improvements for ADA accessibility, that by line item, we had one of our landscape architects go through everything we discovered and basically generate a cost estimate for each one. At the end of that, including the new community center, when you add all that up, you get to an amount of about $21,400,000 and almost $21,500,000. State law does require that you minus out anything that was planned spending or matching funds, or what they call non-local revenues. In this case, there's an existing grant through IDNR and the Parks and Rec Master Plan for land and water conservation funds. I'm sorry for that word salad. Is basically, it's an existing grant. We know of that there's going to be another $250,000 appropriated to the community to help pay for certain park improvements. So we backed that out of that original $21.5 million, and also in the community's current capital improvement plan or program, for park improvements, there are a little over $3 million already planned in spending. So we backed those out as well, essentially, or effectively taking out every bit of spending the town had already accounted for in the next 5 years. So really, once you back all those out, you get to a new number. There is no impact deductions. That's a different piece, but that's not something the town has traditionally done, and we didn't find any in there. When you deduct all those out, you get a new total amount, which was under 20 million. You divide that by the projected number of units that we saw coming into town over the next 5 years, and it ends up with a park impact fee of $423, excuse me. And so that's the math on how we got there. It was basically projected units divided by that total cost after we backed out some of the existing or planned spending.
So, question for you then on this math. So 5,252 new housing units over 5 years, that would be 1,050 housing units per year. When I thought we said the permits issued were going to be 404.
I'm sorry, I did misspeak on that. The state law actually requires you to project out for 10 years. I apologize. I misspoke there earlier.
5252 is a 10-year number.
Yes, it is, and it's wrong in the slide as well. I apologize for that. Yeah, but when the state law does say that you're supposed to look at your impacts over a 10-year period.
That's still like 125 more per year than what is currently projected for the number of housing units.
So you're at 500 versus
525 versus 404.
400,
I'm
yeah.
just making a point of it, yeah.
You're saying this number should be lower.
Correct. Well, 5252 over 10 years, that's 525 a year. estimating 404. I mean, I don't know the accuracy of those estimates based off of the current actual permits being issued on an annual basis in St. John? Or is that, based off of
It was a mix of traditional population growth projections versus, and also the permits that were being issued. We actually, we included a few population calculation measures in there when we projected it.
So
Trying to
Brad,
find
you're
the
saying
exact
the
page
number
for you.
might be too low if you're using a lower number of 4,040. You would actually see that per dwelling fee actually go up then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, just trying to make sure I'm understanding.
Basically, another way of saying this would be that if you look at the current amount of permits or building permits that have come out, we're projecting that you'll be seeing an increase in the next 5 years of the amount of permits due to more growth for the town.
It wasn't a straight year over year.
Okay.
Just add 400
Yeah.
up projection, I guess is where we're going with that.
And I could be jumping ahead here, but what's the current average building permit cost per residential unit in St. John? Do you have that figure?
I couldn't tell you for the total permit fee. We didn't look at that. The existing park impact fee is approximately $1,750.
Okay.
So this would basically
Double
be
it.
doubling that, but that was squarely due to the community center inclusion.
Then what would the stormwater fee, impact fee, and the road impact fee be for a residential?
That, we didn't dive into that because those are different elements of this.
Right, but as a board, if you're supposed to be responsible for all the fees, wouldn't we want to know all the impact fees collectively, what we're looking at math-wise? Maybe?
Yeah,
Yeah.
our,
I know, you're just
no,
presenting.
that's
I
a
understand.
good, our charge was to get to this number.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's just the last slide we had here is we wanted to look at some communities in the area, see where they were. And I think I heard somebody mention Carmel. We put that on here just because that's the highest one in the state. I don't think anybody's reaching for Carmel, so to speak, in terms of their fees or how they do it. They have a lot of planned improvements and a lot of things they're doing down there. But these are just some other fees in the area and Carmel just to show where this stacks up. And a lot of these are starting to creep up as well, we noticed in the last kind of cycle. Cherville, Plainfield, Noblesville, they're all starting to kind of move up as people, or they're experiencing their growth curve too, and people are starting to want a more diverse set of amenities. So we want to include this to kind of show where other communities were at in the state of Indiana. And then this last slide just walks through the project schedule. All the ones that are marked complete are ones that we've already walked through, which is going through the math, crunching the data, getting the zone improvement plan written, coming through. Currently, here we are in progress tonight, presenting it to this group, and also we'll be presenting to the Plan Commission later. And then as the things move through the process, expected to continue to council and other groups as it moves forward and as it advances through the approval process. So I think that's really all I had in terms of a formal presentation. I'm happy to take any additional questions or any other items that you'd want to walk through.
A quick question. So, the past park impact fees, and this may be a question for the board here as much as anything else. Those past park impact fees were used for the same infrastructure improvements of the existing parks.
I can't speak to all the way back. The town's had the park impact fee in place for approximately 15 years, so 3 existing 5-year cycles. I can't speak to all those years. I can say, based on the report that was done 5 years ago, that would be accurate. We didn't prepare that, so I don't know all the in-depth measure of that, but when I read through it, there was there wasn't a lot of park space added in the last 5 years, so this was primarily to do that.
So was there a history look back of saying this was what was raised each year annually versus what was projected, to know the accuracy of the projections that were made in the past for the fees used?
The previous studies that we examined didn't have quite as much detail on the projections used. We only had evidence, except for 5 years ago, we only had evidence of the ordinance that was approved. We didn't have the actual plan document to go through and get to that number.
So like annually, what was taken in underneath the park impact fee? We don't know that total?
Yeah, we didn't have that information available.
Okay.
And and just based on your experience, is a building permit impact fee, is that the only funding mechanism that is commonly turned to for this type of capital improvement projects, or?
Yeah, in the state of Indiana, this is the fee that is set up in state statutes for this type of impact fee. Other states that we work in do it different ways, such as they'll have what's called a land dedication fee, and a developer has the right to go through that process and get to the end and say, all right, no, based on how many people we're going to create with our development, we'll owe you a certain acreage of park, which has a per acre fee associated with it, which they can pay in lieu of providing the parkland. But that's Illinois, that's Ohio, that's other states. Here in Indiana, this is pretty much it.
So budgetary, when we pay our property tax bill, there's no amount coming out of a property tax bill, be it commercial or residential, that's going into a pot where the funds could be used for parks.
Yeah, unless there's a specific referendum approved for a purpose like building a community center, all
No,
the
I didn't say that. I said for parks in general. So if you have existing parks and you're maintaining your existing parks, are those,
yeah,
where are those funds coming from?
Those are
and
allocated
where can
by-
they come from?
They are paid for by property taxes, but it is the town's discretion to allocate those every year. They don't have to. There's nothing in your tax bill that says X amount of dollars has to go to parks. So that 1% we all pay on our residential property taxes goes into a big pot of money. Town council goes through their budget process every year and decides where that money goes. So parks are usually part of that, and it's part of that process, but there's nothing in state statute that says you have to fund parks through that process.
So because we don't have data for what was collected on prior impact park fees, we don't know how much has gone to parks and how much of it came from the impact fees versus how much was relied on by existing property taxes.
Yeah, we do not have that information available tonight.
It seems like that's something one would want. I mean, I kind of feel like you'd want to know some of this background information to kind of gauge if you're allocating enough or not enough, and if you're really covering the existing parks to begin with. Yeah,
So maybe that's a question back to Joe and to Beth, right? Joe Wizawati, the town manager, Beth Hernandez, the clerk treasurer, to provide some of that analysis or assessment.
Yeah, that information isn't available to us publicly, so we'd have to request that through staff.
So Matt, of this $21 million, how much is related to the community center? I was trying to find where in the deck it was showing here's how we got to the 21 million.
Yeah, and it was, I forget exactly which page it was on. It's approximately 12.5 million was associated to the community center. So about half. And that's when I mentioned earlier, that's the reason the park impact fee doubled, is because that facility is essentially double what has been planned maintenance through this fee over the last 5 years.
Page 26 of the zoning improvement packet has the actual number with the breakdown of the chart,
Thank you.
and that's where you can see what the community center was. FYI, the packet for the zoning, I thought was very well done. I would have liked to maybe have seen subtotals by park for what was being allocated by park for a summary total, but overall, I thought that was well done.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, and that's
there's-
Just a
not- that's
minor
not,
note,
no,
but-
that's not something we thought of because we're always looking at it in total. So that,
Right, but I think when a
Yeah, you're
homeowner
right.
or community member's looking at it, they're gonna kind of well, hold it, my park's getting 10 grand and the other park's getting 30, that
Totally.
factors into when people are looking at this, And like thinking, well, my park's stuck in the back of nowhere because I'm in one of the old subdivisions and no one can get to it, no one uses it, why are you giving, 150 to something that no one's ever gonna use because you can't get to it anyway?
Right. No, I think that's, believe me, I'm taking a note for future efforts.
Any other questions at this point? We've got a recommendation of adoption of this change to the impact fee. I'm going to read it and then I'll look for a motion. This is a recommendation to the Plan Commission and the Town Council of the Town of St. John in Lake County, Indiana. I need to turn this on. This is a recommendation of adoption to the Plan Commission and the Town Council of the Town of St. John, Lake County, Indiana, pursuant to the requirements of Indiana Code 36-7-4-1312, at whatever that is. As amended from time to time, the Impact Fee Advisory Committee of the Town of St. John, by its duly appointed representatives, recommends the implementation of a park and recreation impact fee to the Plan Commission and Town Council with a favorable recommendation upon a motion duly made and seconded at a public meeting held on the 5th day of July 2023 at the proposed rate of, this would be 100% of the full rate, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. The same being, and where's that figure? The $3,423 per dwelling unit, and that the report upon which the recommendation is premised is attached hereto as Exhibit A, also referred to as the 2023 Zone Improvement Plan. Do I have a motion to pass this recommendation?
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to ask, is there an opportunity for the committee to be able to consider the events that, or the information that's presented tonight, and then make a recommendation, like, between now and the actual next Plan Commission meeting?
Yeah, but we need to get a first and
I-
a second first, and then we'll open it to questions and comments.
I would prefer postponing until we had more information. I just feel like there should have, and I'm not saying what's being proposed should not be put forth and approved eventually. I just don't feel like all the information that shows due diligence was done and everything looked at from a board standpoint. I'm sure staff has looked at it, but without, my experience when you're a board is you have to show that you actually saw all this information, that you don't have questions. And I feel like, not knowing what the total impact fee per lot is for new construction, for each individual, those are things we should have had in front of us before you can say, yes, you've evaluated it and you're okay with an additional $3,400+.
Right, but can we get a first and a second, and then we'll carry on the discussion?
Because the first and the second doesn't necessarily mean that you are aligned to
Correct,
moving
Passing.
it. It's just allowing you to have the discussion about the motion.
right. We need to know what we're discussing first before we can discuss it. So we're not taking the vote yet. We are just making a first and a second, then we discuss, and then we can look at the vote or not.
And then the vote could be to
To
recommend, not
put it off.
recommend, or defer,
Right.
I think. That,
Okay.
So I need a motion.
so I would make a motion. Oh, sorry. I would make a motion to, I'm making a motion, to
you'd be making a motion to adopt, which is why I
Yeah,
won't make one.
yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
comfortable
yeah.
making a motion to adopt
I get
without
ya.
information. That's where I'm running into this catch-22.
Yeah,
You're,
yeah,
you're
yeah.
putting it forward, so I mean, I'd be more comfortable making a motion to deny and then have the information presented and then have a second motion later on to approve once I have the information. So I guess
Yeah.
I'm willing to make a motion to deny the adaptation until we have additional information.
Yes, I'm with you.
Okay.
I'm with
well,
you, yes.
Let me first,
Before you guys consider what you're talking about, maybe I can enlighten a little bit about what's going on with that. The original fee in 2017 for the
Mr. Beasold.
$1,750.
I'm sorry, sir, could you state your name and?
Dave Beasold, Parks Board President.
Great.
Okay.
I knew that, but I just wanted.
It's okay. It was $1,750, and that was based on 200 homes maximum per year. The amount of homes built between 2017 and 2022 was a little over 1,000. So it was more than what was projected. Therefore, we were at a shortfall based on community input, as far as bodies were, as to actual parks and fees. The only thing that were built in that 2017-2023 timeframe was the Gates Park and Founders Park, both over by the gates of St. John. We are currently in phase one of the Gates skate park project, with approximately phases 2 and 3 to cost upwards of $1 million to $2 million to finish. Pavilions, courts, therefore. Founders Park is complete. As far as maintenance, we have a 23 park plan that we renovate 2 parks a year for the next 10 years, and then we just rotate, okay? We actually have a list based on need and necessity. So there is a current program that'll be part of our 5-year master plan to overhaul and look at every park, renovate, paint, fix up, whatever the case may be, over the next 10 years. That's part of our master plan. As far as incoming, the amount of money that we currently have to spend that is not part of the budget that the town council sets is a little over $1 million currently that we have. But we are projecting to have most of that spent down in the next 2 years as we finish the Gates Park. So,
Okay, so just because I don't know, walk me through on, like, for example, we'll use the Gates Park.
okay.
How much of that is paid for, if any, by the developer?
None.
Or is it all done through the?
It's all done
fees?
through the impact fee.
So the,
So any community improvement, like the actual funding, the $500,000 that was funded for the actual skate park, came from our impact fees.
so the acquisition of that land also?
That land was town-owned.
Town-owned. Okay, so. Okay. So then we have $1 million roughly in the account
Yes.
that you can use.
Mm-hmm.
Only 2 parks a year are gonna be, existing parks will be renovated.
That's the game plan, yes, based on need, not based on size. Currently, right now, Heartland Park has been redone. Prairie West Park, the other big community park, has been done. Lake Hills has been done, all what they call the pour and play, soft playground, thing. There's a few other parks that are in that. That's our goal for all our playground parks, is to have that pour and play, soft, spongy, lack of no mulch, no dirt, no gravel. ADA requires us to do some other things which are quite expensive if we renovate parks. So there's a lot more to it than just
Right.
doing it.
I'm not questioning. So when we look at our list of parks, we obviously had more than 10 parks in that 5-year plan.
Correct. It's a 10-year plan. It's 2 a year for the next 10 years. That's basically 20.
But our fees are only for 5 years.
The current fee, yeah. That will be readjusted in 5 more years. So
Right, but-
2028.
But when you're taking the fees collectively to create the impact fee, the total dollar amount, you're using every single park, even though we know we're not gonna do every single park, correct?
Well, we are, but not at one time.
Okay.
May I interject at this point? We have 3 minutes to
Right.
7, so we need to make.
I'm just trying to help you answer any
Yes.
questions that you might
I
have.
appreciate it, thank you.
Okay?
And we do have, to get back, Brad, to your question, we do have an opportunity next Tuesday to have a meeting to discuss this further and perhaps make a decision before we impact the town's ability to meet their schedule and getting this expiring, the presently expiring impact fee and updating it to the new fee. That's the pressure that we are under right now, because if we don't get a decision by the next plan committee meeting, not counting tonight, it will impact their ability to collect this fee in January. It was explained to us because of the expiration dates. So for instance, if we had to put this off a month, that would mean that next January, they would not be able to collect fees, the new fee, and the old fee would have expired. So
Right, but the minutes are 2.5 years old, so, I mean, there should have been time to, but I understand.
So, are you comfortable with the explanation that was just given us? Do you want more information?
I mean, from my perspective, I think I need just, sorry. From my perspective, I think I just need a little time to digest all this. And if we could have a few more days to be able to look at it, Matt and Dave, if we can get your email addresses so that we can fire off questions that we have, then I'd be willing to come back on, Tuesday and be able to then make a decision. But I think there was maybe miscommunication or not enough communication around what the requirements were for this evening.
That's your choice.
What?
That's your choice.
Okay. Would you also be able to get us a synopsis of what you just talked to us about how the spending was done in the past?
Sure.
versus how much money
That
was-
you'd have to get from the clerk treasurer. She has all the up-to-date information.
From who, sir?
The clerk treasurer.
Oh, okay.
She has all because it goes month to month, and we just paid bills for the end of May, June, so that, we're basically halfway through our fiscal year, so that would be able to give you a little bit more information of current funds.
So Parks and Rec they don't have like a synopsis of what they've done over the past 5 years?
Yes, we do, but that's about 500 pages.
You don't want that?
No, I didn't think you would.
Is that like an executive summary?
Yeah, it's columnized, so yeah, it's pretty intense, pretty involved.
See, I don't think I'm looking for that much. I just would like to see it on a piece of paper so that the public can see too. This is what all our collective impact fees are. This, because you're raising a total collective.
Correct.
And, I have no issue with per se, what that total may or may not be. I'm not saying you're asking for too little or too much. I'm just saying part of the due diligence has to be showing it publicly, which if this is the first meeting, there's people out in the community that have no idea this is happening either. And they may be sitting back saying, well, you guys should be tripling that because we got too many houses. Now, I'm not going to say I agree with that, but, when
Part of that is the planning commission's job, and they're going to hold a public hearing for such information.
Right, but if we're being asked to raise something, we have to know what we're raising and
Right.
why. So that's also, for me, it's like anything that's gonna collectively change the individual lot's fee, all those impact fees, be it 10, 2, 3, or 20, I would like to see all of those, what that number is. And then I would just like to have like a little one-page summary that says, for example, last year, this is what we did, this is how much money is in the park account, this is, we're doing 2 parks. I'm not looking for anything complicated. I don't need 500 pages of anything, but just enough to say that it was part of the consideration, which I'm sure you guys have done. Unfortunately, that knowledge has to somehow end up on this side too.
Yeah, I don't have all that information, so. Anything else?
So at this point, Mr. Chairman, do we just elect to, elect to table this to Tuesday until we can discuss further? I guess I'm not sure about procedure at this point.
Yep.
I guess I'll need somebody to
Ralph,
make a
maybe.
motion to defer the meeting till next Tuesday, but we'll need to get together and specifically put in writing what we want from somebody. I'm not even sure who to go to.
Yeah, town staff would be the ones that would provide the permit fee information and the breakdown and all that.
Okay, all right. So I need a motion to defer this decision until next week, hopefully on Tuesday. And in the meantime, we will put in writing what additional information we need.
I motion that we postpone the matter of the recommendation for the Plan Commission for the new park assessment fees be postponed till July 11th.
Is that Tuesday?
That's Tuesday.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'd second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Motion passed. And we will do that. Please put any requests for information that you want in an email to me, and then I'll get it to.
I need your email, I don't have it.
Okay,
Oh,
and,
it's in one of the chains probably.
yes, it is.
Yeah.
And I'll get that.
Public comment if you don't, we're in violation of state statute, just as a reminder.
The public
For
comment.
clarification purposes, would that meeting also be at 6 o'clock? Didn't hear a time.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Would the meeting to reconvene next week be at 6 o'clock as well?
No, we were looking at earlier during the day.
Well, that-
And I'll get with Anastasia on that one. I didn't, the meeting following this meeting is going to have a public comment period on this. Is that what you were talking about?
No, I believe we have to do a public comment even in ours, even if you just offer and no one takes it. I believe procedurally we're required by law.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah, every public meeting has to have a,
Doesn't matter if there's another one.
before you can adjourn, you have to allow the public to make any comments, yeah.
Okay, well then, do I need to open a public comment period? Officially?
I think you can just ask if anybody in the public would like to address
Does the
them.
public have any comments on this issue, or actually, any issue, right,
Right, yeah, any issue on tonight's agenda?
on tonight's agenda?
That's it.
Okay.
I motion to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes, thank you.
Want to hit the